Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. We at Kaplan and Stratton pride ourselves in working with the best and learning from the best. But do we really know who we work with? Do we really know the people behind the KNS brand? Do we really know what it took for them to get to where they are today? K Connects, My Career Journey, is an initiative to help us understand and appreciate the experiences that they have had before and learn from this. And also, hopefully, we'll be able to inspire the younger generation of professionals as they chart their own career paths. My name is Eva Biegon, and I'm honored to be joined by my colleague, Mr. James Muthui, who is a partner in our litigation department and also a patron of K Connects. Welcome, James.
Thank you very much, Eva.
So we'll get right to it. Actually, when I was preparing this, I asked people to give us questions about what they would want to learn about you. And it was impressive how many people were interested in knowing about you. How do you feel about that?
It's interesting because I think I'm known by most people. I do interact. I do interact with quite a number of both the lawyers and the non-lawyers. So I was a bit surprised that there were many questions about me. But that shows that what we are doing here is really a great thing, and I want to thank you, Eva, for running with this. Because we are a family. I think when you think about it, we spend 8 hours with our colleagues at work, and probably how much? 5 hours with our families. So maybe this is a first family for each one of us.
Okay, great. So are you a city boy or a country boy?
I'm a country boy. I grew up in the village. I was born and brought up in a village called Nyagatugu in Loathia location of Kangema in Muranga County. The only interaction I had with the city was visiting my dad. My dad was working at Naivasha, so during the school holidays, some of the holidays I would go and spend time with him, with some of my siblings. So going to Naivasha and back to the village, that was the only interaction I think I had with the city.
Okay, so why law? Like with that background?
Right. Why law? I think I love working with people. That's something I've come to appreciate. If you ask me what I wanted to be in my early years as a young boy, I actually wanted to be a bishop of the Anglican Church. But perhaps because some of the people who had made great impressions on me at that early age were bishops. My dad was a friend to some of the bishops in the Rift Valley and in Central Province. He served in the church, not as a church person, but as a lay person. But in the course, he had many interactions with them. So I came across them, and they made huge impressions on me. Later on, in the year 1991, is when I did my KCPE. That's when in this country there was quite a bit of agitation for more multi-party democracy. And there was a gentleman, now senior counsel, Paul Muthui, who again had a great impression on me. They were being arrested and asked questions, and I really admired the way he dealt with some of the issues then. And I asked my dad, who is he? And he says he's a lawyer, and I thought, maybe that's what I want to be. When I cleared high school, we had a discussion with one of my maternal uncles, and if you asked him, he wanted me to be an engineer. And he felt that if I did law, I was going to end up being a politician, which he didn't think was a very good thing. Maybe I will. No, I just but I've from an early age desired working with people, and for me, law was one career which gives me that opportunity.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So where did you start? Like once you were done with high school, you did law as a course in uni, then you were admitted. Where did you start?
I started off at HHM, Hamilton, Harrison, and Matthews. That was my starting point for my legal career.
How long were you there for?
I did pupillage at HHM. Another very long story. We can't talk about it now from campus to HHM, including some sabotage exercise along the way. That's a story for another day. But I made my application at HHM. I strongly wanted to go there. I know senior counsel is here. I didn't know much about KNS then. Shame on me. The only people that I knew here were senior counsel friend Dr. Frendo Giabu. Again, I was still within, when I was at that time, I was still interacting with Christian lawyers and had gotten to know him. And Bill Devro, they were the only two people that I knew. I knew also Inosi, who after campus, I think she was about some 3-4 years ahead of me, did her pupillage here. So I didn't know much about KNS, and honestly, what then was to get to KNS, you needed some connections. So I made my application at HHM. We did a series of 3 interviews, including some lunch at the Stanley. And then I was picked in the end, and I started my journey there. 6 months later, when we were just about to complete our pupillage program, one of the legal assistants, we used to call them, I think you might know that, we left the firm, and my supervisor then approached me and said, I think you can do this work, do you want to try? I said, why do you think I can do it? We had done an arbitration, a Kenneth Bill Shell arbitration. I was very much involved in it, not in the background research and drafting and all that. And he said, from what you did in this arbitration, I think you can do this. Of course, the big attraction for me was money, because then I was getting a job. So I took it up, and as they say, the rest, I think, is history.
Okay, that's great. And how did you come to KNS? Now that you said you didn't know about them before.
Right. Very interesting. So one day I was on my desk. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was doing my work, and I received a call. And the person on the other side of that call is one of my partners now, Esther Kenyanja. Said, can we have a conversation? I said, what about? Because we didn't have much to do with each other then. And so we arranged for a meeting. I met her, and she asked me, we are thinking of hiring someone, and we are wondering whether you'd be minded or you'd be interested in joining us. And so we explored that. I said, okay, let me go and think about it and pray about it, which I tend to do a bit. And at that time, incidentally, I think I had gotten to a point where I was beginning to feel, because of my desire for working with people, I like connection, deep connection, and true, genuine connection. There was a sense of it that I felt I was missing at the time. So actually that call came at the time where I was thinking, I want deeper connections with the people that I work with. And so I did a little bit of research. I spoke to Kozima then, asked how it was to be at KNS, and after those conversations, I said yes, and here I am.
So you can confidently say you were poached.
I don't know, I had a conversation.
Okay, so in your practice, how did you initially determine which areas you want to practice in? Like now you're a litigation lawyer. Was that the thing you wanted to do from the very beginning?
So in a sense, I think it wasn't so much of choosing. If I take you back to what I said, when I was just about to finish my pupillage and that vacancy happened, and I was approached about it, I don't know, my supervisor then felt I could do dispute resolution. I hadn't really thought through, because at that time I had in mind, I thought I would do intellectual property. I don't know whether Patrick is here or Peter Heimer. I mean, that's what, it was a bit new for us. I was very good at it in campus, and I thought this is it. So when this opportunity came up, I took it. Part of it was the conversation with my supervisor then, Mr. Kirago Kimani. Why do you think I can do this? And then he told me what he thought about me. The second thing I could have done was, other than intellectual property, I was considering conveyancing. And so when I reflected and we had this conversation and my desire for working with people and the opportunities there and all that, I think it became a little easier for me then to say, this is it, I'll try it. And I loved it. So I would probably say I wouldn't do IP now or conveyancing. I'm very happy doing what I do.
That's great. So, as a man of faith, as you've alluded to the fact that you pray quite a bit about things, and a litigation lawyer, has there been any conflicts in your practice of law and your faith?
Okay. Interestingly, I have rarely come across a law or practice of law that is repugnant to my faith. And when you think about it, most of the laws and how we ought to practice law is really not repugnant to faith. I'm not sure of any law that tells you go and steal or do the other, or so outrightly nothing really. I would say, of course, barring the emerging practices where we are now being not only asked to recognize things, but even bow to them. And I think we have to have clarity on our own convictions and say whether we're gonna do those things or not. But otherwise, I think the bigger challenge is usually in the ethical questions that come. Not the law, not how the law ought to be practiced, but the emerging and the thinking by different people that you either can beat the law or you can be a little smarter, and therefore you have these unethical practices. And there are many of them from different quarters. Have I come across them? Yes. There are instances where maybe you may have a client who is asking, can we guarantee an outcome? And of course, if you have a conversation with them on how you can guarantee an outcome, you have got to fix it before. For us, it's very easy because I think for most of the clients, and I think that is very rare. It's for people who maybe not know us very well, and they are relatively new. And I would just say, look, we as a firm, we don't do such things, or this is how we do legal practice. I have had instances where I get some emissaries from judicial officers and say you don't want to have any conversation on matters that are in court. I've had instances where maybe some calls have come from people who are associated very closely with government. Those things have nothing to do with the law or the right practice of the law. I think it's the unethical practices. And I think, as I said, the clarity of my convictions has always been a very helpful thing. What do I mean by that? Is beforehand, knowing this is how I want to do the practice of law, this is what I believe is right, and should I find myself in those challenges, this is how I should deal with it. But they have been there.
What is the lowest point in your career? If you can pinpoint a situation where you were really like, this is not good, or this is terrible.
I was hoping we can avoid that question. But here it is. I think for me, the lowest point for me was the 28th of August, 2019.
Oh, you have a date?
Yes.
Okay.
I think quite a number of you might know what happened on that date. If you don't remember maybe the event or the date itself, is when 4 of our partners left the firm. And then we went and set up the other one. Not so much the leaving, because people do leave. I think the manner of it is what perhaps was a bit difficult, because we as a firm had certain conversations and we believed that we were heading in certain direction. And then, of course, it came to light that the 4 had to leave. And I think for me, all of the four, I would say, were my good friends. And there was a big sense, besides being friends and partners in the farm, you want the best for them, you want the best for yourself and for the farm. I think when I evaluated what was happening in me then, there was a deep sense of disappointment and betrayal to some certain degree. So that was difficult. Also, maybe because of the reaction from you as members of staff. Some of you were completely down and needed to be picked. And it's not an easy thing to pick people when they are down. There were clients who were also asking, so what has happened? As you can imagine, when that happened, a lot of conversations do take place. So that for me was a bit difficult. How we dealt with it, thank God, I think the fact that we are friends as partners, and we rallied together and we put our might on what needed to be done about staff, about clients, about the running of the business. And look, I think we are thriving and doing great. And so I thank God.
Wow, the room has become very quiet. So let's go to interesting times. What are your highlights? What are the highlights of your career? Like, if you can pinpoint three highlights.
Three highlights. Very quickly. One, I think, is the places I've been able to travel, both within and far. Secondly, the people that I've been able to meet. Very interesting. People. Law exposes you to a myriad of people, both in terms of characters, in terms of conviction, in terms of their professions. One highlight for me, when I was young, in my career, Dr. Jampo had a lot of faith in me, and I have no idea why. He threw me into the Chomri matter. Those of you who might know Tom Chomri, or Leslie so. So Chomri was involved in this twice, and you know what happened. And so Dr. Ojiabo tells me to travel to Nakuru, and I was still fairly young. I can't remember how. So I was rather overwhelmed. And I think part of what the overwhelming bit of it was not the enormity of the task, because as a lawyer I could deal with it. And I think we made some very good friendship with Tom, even liked from the beginning. But the pressure from the media, international media, and of course there was a big part of it which had to do with the history of this country. There are people who felt that someone who may have been associated, if you like, with the history of this country, that tries to suggest that with the colonial undertones and all that, they should not be represented. So, whereas you're having this conversation and you believe that somebody ought to be defended and you're doing the right thing for them, there was also a lot of questions and a lot of pressure from other quarters. Maybe what Dr. Ojiambo didn't even remember, but I remember we discussed it. I mentioned earlier on my dad was working in Naivasha.
Yeah.
So Naivasha is home for me. I'm very well known there, actually probably more than Muranga. And so Tom was from Naivasha. And so when we started appearing on the media, and the pressure on my dad and myself from people who knew us was immense. So that was a bit difficult, but a lot of encouragement from Dr. Giambo, and here we are, and thriving and doing well, I believe.
Okay, that's great. What three things do you wish you knew in your first 5 years of practice, like as a junior advocate?
Maybe number one, how to deal with the media then.
Yeah.
From what I've said. But we did well. I have no regrets at all about that. But on a more serious note, I think investment opportunities. I think I had a lot of, well, not a lot, but there was money which I could have invested better than perhaps I did. Probably the enjoyment of life, generosity. Generosity is good and all that, but you end up having quite a bit of of money which I could otherwise have probably invested better.
Yeah.
That I didn't. And maybe sometimes it's because you think you have these many years ahead of you, and what matters at that time is some of the things you want to do. But the beauty of being young is that you have many years ahead of you, and if you reflect on some of those opportunities, you can maximize on those opportunities. The second one was I should have done my master's within that period. I think I had always wanted to do a master's in environmental law, which I ended up doing in the year between 2017 and 2019. Of course, by this time, my mind was lusty as far as academics are concerned, because a lot of time had passed. The demography in the campus was completely different. Jerry was my classmate, and I'm thinking, why am I classmates with Jerry? One of my lecturers then was my pupil. So I walked into class and I walked out. I thought I was in the wrong place, and I asked the guys who are at the reception, "Is this where the masters is being done?" Say, "Yes, it is." Why? Because the person up there was my pupil. So I think I took a bit of time, and maybe that put a little more pressure on me, because you have a farm that you're running. I had a family. I'm involved quite a bit in the society. Then there is this academic issues, and as I said earlier, the departure that happened 2019, again, I was doing my master's then. So it was a bit heavy for me. Maybe if I did it in my first 5 years, it would not have been that heavy.
Okay, if we can just explore that a little bit. So what would you recommend for the younger advocates or people who are planning to pursue a master's degree? Would you recommend that they do it immediately after school? Or would you recommend that they do a bit of practice, then go back to school?
And it's a good question. I think for me, the first thing is whether you need to do it. I find a lot of people perhaps who want to do it just for the sake, and if you ask them what do you want to do next, they may have no idea. So the first question is whether you want to do it, because you don't want to put in some years there and some money, and you probably will not need it. But having said that, I think for majority of the people coming from the universities now, and maybe because of the competencies of their colleagues, it's an added advantage. So we find that majority of them actually want to do it, even if they don't have immediate plans on what to do with it. I think it would be better if you do it at that stage, as opposed to waiting until a lot of things have happened. Number one, because your mind is still and your body is still, in line with studies and all that. Secondary is because when you grow and you have a family, you have a farm to run and all that, some things will have to suffer. One of the things that suffered the most then was my relationship with my children. Not in the sense that anything major happened, but I like spending time with them. And if I'm in school between 5 until 9, you'll find they're already asleep. In the morning, I have to wake up very early in the morning to come and catch up with work before I go to school again. So for me, those are some of the challenges. I would encourage anyone who wants to do their masters to do it early, than leaving it until rather late.
Okay. And on the other issue of spending and investment, the young people nowadays have a slogan, YOLO. You only live once.
Okay.
So if you have the money, why not? That would be probably what people think.
You only live once. I think I would probably say you only live once if you are born once. But if you are born twice, by that I'm alluding to, if you believe in life beyond yourself, whether through faith, religion, or doing things for the sake of others, it's not as simple as you just do what you want. You may want to consider making certain sacrifices for the sake of others. I think there is a good reason why we are 8 billion people on earth. You know, when you, for those of you who read scripture, there are billions or zillions of galaxies, and each one of those galaxies have their own billions of stars. Why didn't God or whoever you believe created them not give you a galaxy, give Eve the Milky Way, give me another one, and each one of you? It's possible because there are more than 8 billion. He could have done that. But he put us here together. Why? Because I think communal living and taking care of each other is a fundamental thing that we need to treasure and to make certain sacrifices for the sake of others.
Yeah, you've mentioned you're involved in various social programs and activities. Which ones are these? Might you be involved in like Rotary, mentorship outside of work?
I am not involved at the moment, not in lottery. I have done quite a bit of with my family, taking care of, let's say, the underprivileged in terms of paying their school fees and seeing them through life from primary. We have one graduate from the university, the others who are still in school, people that I know, or people that have come across who are in that sort of a situation. Then in terms of mentorship, I am very heavily involved with young people, mainly through two forums. One is the Kenya Christian Lawyers Fellowship. I've had the privilege of serving there as a chair. And one of the things that we have done over time is to allow the older lawyers to work with the younger lawyers. So I, for instance, this year have about 15 young men, deliberately.
Who are lawyers?
Yes, who are lawyers.
Only men.
But if we want, we can go into that. But they're only men. Sometimes maybe to remove some of the temptations of life. Work with those ones for a period of 1 year, have meetings, have conversations, the second one is I do something called Bible Study Fellowship, BSF. Again, BSF is an interdenominational worldwide Bible study forum, and where again you have a group of about 15 that I work with throughout the year. Do study Bible study with them, critical Bible study. Some of them have been Muslims. Some of them have been atheists. So it's not just for. And I was amazed once I had a Muslim in my group, and the conversations, another an atheist, and working with those people and discussing matters of faith and matters of law and all these things has been quite exciting. The last thing I'm doing in terms of this conversation is I think as a society we have completely, and before you throw stones, allow me to explain, we have completely, in a sense, devalued the place of men in society. I think we have, for good reason, elevated the boy child, and empowered the boy child, the girl child. Very, very helpful, very instrumental in society. But I think one of the things we did along the way is to forget about men. And I mean, those girls, they need the men to marry and do life with. And what is happening is that you realize that because of the lack of responsibility in men, even those girls are suffering. So I'm involved in an exercise where we are trying again to engage with the men and bring them to back to the sense and the role of responsibilities in their families. In fact, as we speak, we have put together a group of the men from my entire village, and we have begun having buzis and have conversations about some of these things, because I think it's important that men do take their responsibility in society.
That's great to know, actually, because there have been quite a few conversations around men, young men actually losing focus and not wanting to take responsibility for their lives. So it's good to hear that such initiatives actually exist. Yeah. So you mentioned that you value your family very much, especially within the context of you're going back to school and not having time for your children. So how do you get a good work-life balance on a normal, all factors being equal?
Um, I'm a workaholic. I can work for very long hours, and I've done that. Sometimes as late as 12, 1, when the need arises. But I think there was something we said earlier on about clarity on convictions, which for me is a very important thing. It's a question of looking and saying, what are some of the very important things about my life that I need to be very deliberate and intentional about? And I think for me, one is family. So what I've done, maybe two things. One is to have a conversation with myself and say, there is always work to be done, but there are other very important things in life, like family, that need to be taken care of. And what that means is that I will ensure that I organize myself in such a way that I don't have to work late, not those hours until I have to. Um, what do I mean? Sometimes it's because we have not organized ourselves properly that we end up putting in long hours. But if I've organized myself, and it's a case of there is a client who is in this situation and there is need to stretch the hours, that I will do. But on ordinary days, I want to work up to a certain hour so that I'm able to have time with my family. The second is not me alone, but as a partners in the farm, is helping each other, and keeping each other accountable on this question of life balance, and actually even just taking care of ourselves. If it means going to someone's office and telling them, you're working too hard, as you should, but you need some rest. A case in point, I have had several instances where either Nazima comes to my office and tells me, you must leave, and I'll tell her the same thing. By the way, she's telling me I must come for Zumba, so Thursday I'll be there.
You haven't attended any session actually.
So the accountability with my partners is an important thing, because it's not just about the work, but looking after each other and seeing where someone needs help one way or the other, and stepping in there and maybe making a conversation, having a conversation with them, or suggesting to them some of the ways in which they can take care of themselves.
What about the relationships outside of work and home, like your friends? How do you make time to meet with them without, losing touch completely?
Again, I think being intentional and deliberate. What nowadays I've been doing is to schedule, the times when I will have interactions with my friends. I was supposed to do lunch with one of them today, but I say because of this, we'll postpone it. So just speak and say, look, I need to have conversations and genuine conversations with people, not just doing lunch. And so look at my calendar, set dates with them. For most of the men, I think an hour is not enough. Why? Because we are, unlike ladies, we rarely just talk straight to the point. I mean, it's a conversation that builds on many things, and then you begin to zero in on some key issues. So you need a little bit, I need a little bit of time with the significant men in my life. So for those ones, I'll probably do a Saturday afternoon where we sit and we just have some lunch or some drinks and have conversations. Intentionality, again, I think.
I can tell you, even ladies, we need a lot more time. So how do you unwind after a difficult day, a long day? What is your relaxation go-to?
Okay. The best for me is connecting with nature. Um, if if I'm tired, if I'm stressed, if I need to unwind, I find connecting with nature as a very, very helpful way of unwinding. What does that mean? I take walks, lots of them. I've discovered a new one where I walk on glass without shoes.
Sorry?
Yeah, I was told it's a very therapeutic way of
Broken
doing.
glass?
No, just glass, lawns, okay?
Oh,
Without
okay.
shoes,
Yeah.
just
Okay,
step
okay.
on it, and for an hour or so. So, sorry?
So you go to a
Look,
park and
let me explain. I come from Central Province. I mean GLAS, glass, not glue, not the other one. Yeah.
so you do that often, like
Yes, I do that
whenever you
often.
can.
If I can every evening when I go home, take some 30, sometimes at night, I am at a place where I can walk or do that. If I'm not able to walk or connect with nature in such ways, I sometimes have to do intense exercises, especially when I'm feeling like there is someone I want to struggle, either a judge or whoever. Just do some intense exercises. I love playing tennis. I haven't done much of it recently. I injured my shoulder some time back, and I need to go back to it. So such exercises help me to unwind
So
and
that's
relax.
also what you do for fun. You relax and that's your enjoyment. Or do you have any other activity that you do for fun?
For fun, I think at the moment, actually, the fun is connected with the family because my children are teenagers now. So as a way of taking care of them and connecting with them, I extend that to their activities. Or they join my activities. So we end up doing quite a bit together, whether it's a tennis, whether it's badminton, whether it's dart, chess, all those different sporting activities. But one other thing I like is athletics, not learning, but I watch a lot of athletics. If I'm around, one way in which I enjoy myself is just downloading Faith Yegon, Eliud Kipchoge, all those athletes, from their lessons in the past, and just watch, and I can watch them again and again. I really like this lady who has now recently gone to the marathon. I forget the name. She used to do 5,000 and 10,000. Not Faith. Faith is a current. There was one before Faith. So I would download those videos and watch them again and again, and they really thrill me.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, now we've come to the end, but one last question. What advice would you have for young lawyers who are just starting out in their career?
All right. There are some two pieces of advice which I was given by people in my life, which have stuck with me, which I would like to share. Once one of my lecturers, Joy Asiema, told me once that, and others, of course, we were talking about the years ahead of us, the careers ahead, and we were talking about the cars and the money and the things that you, as big shot lawyers you want to have. And then she told us it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. So relax. Those things, by God's grace and God willing, they will come. The second piece of advice I was given by someone I treasure a lot. I had a small car. I was here at then, actually. It was a Toyota 100. It was my first car.
It's a very good car.
Yeah, I miss it. So I had gone to court, and after court, this gentleman was leaving court as well, and so I offered to give him a ride, and he accepted. So when we were having this conversation coming back to the office, and I was very apologetic about my small car, and he told me, never underestimate humble beginnings. That person was none other than Dr. Ojiambo. He accepted a ride in my Toyota 100, and he told me, gave me that piece of advice. I would want to share that with the younger lawyers, because I think they have been very, very important pieces of advice for me, and have lived by them now, and I have continued to treasure them. Perhaps just to add on top of that, two other things. One is never sell your soul. I think you are living in days where everything is very artificial. The people you see on social media are not the people that you meet on the road, on the corridors or on the roads. And there is a lot of pressure to appear to have it, but never sell your soul. I think it's for good reason that Scripture says that a good name is better than a good perfume. Perfumes, how some of those very nice perfumes are, a good name is better than those. So I would say never sell your soul. If it's a question of losing the money or the opportunity for the sake of your name, I would rather you lose those opportunities and the money and just keep your soul. Number two is excel, distinguish yourself in your character, in your competences, and your credibility. Those are the things that are going to help you become who you want to be. And I think as much as there are a lot of people who are saying the legal profession is now overcrowded in the sense of there are too many lawyers that are graduating, I think those things, having character, competence, and credibility, alongside the other things that we have said, will take you far. And above that, for those of you who are believers, I believe God orchestrates circumstances and situations in life to also help us achieve His purposes and plans, which include your profession and what you hope to be. So don't sell your soul because sometimes of the pressure and all those things. Believe that God is able to see you through. If you're not a believer, I don't know, but there are certain principles which I think are common, whether you are Christian or not, whether you are a believer or not, that they are able to help you. And I think what you're saying about not selling your soul is not just for a Christian, it's for every human being. Don't sell your soul. Distinguish yourself with your character, with your credibility, and all these other things, and you will get there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muthui. It's been a pleasure having you with us.
My pleasure and my joy. Thank you very much.